Hello, the genius. Welcome back. Welcome back. Welcome back. So, in our last session, we actually talked about class selectors. And you remember that selectors are actually what we use to target what we want to style. We use CSS to style this HTML, our HTML web page. So, when we want to style a particular element, or so whatever we want to style, how do we select it? So that is the different kinds of selectors we are talking about. We have talked about how we can use the class attributes to select a particular element. Now, today in this section, we are going to talk, we will be talking about the type selector. Okay, basically, the type selector is actually um, the tag name, the element selector. Okay, so what does it look like? So let's take a look at it. So what's the basic syntax? Now, in CSS, a type selector is one of the most basic and commonly used selectors. Okay, it is one of the most basic and commonly used selectors. It targets all elements of a specified type or tag name. So when you want to target an element, we actually use the tag name. So the type selector is where we use the tag name. Let's say we want to target a paragraph, we use P. We want to target H1, we use H1. We want to target a span, we use span. Okay, so we just use the tag name to target that element. Okay. And then we can now write our style. So the syntax for a type selector is simply the name of an HTML element like P, H1, or div. Okay. So you're just, instead of in class, when we are using class selector, we will do dot, then the class name. Do you understand? But this time around, we don't do something like that. We just go with the tag name. So we are targeting here, we are actually targeting an element. All right. So something like this. All right. Here we are saying we are targeting all the paragraphs in this web page, all the paragraphs in the web page. So when we do something like this, every paragraph in the web page will be colored blue. So this example will make all elements on the page to have blue text. So let's go to code and see. Now, okay, now this is what we mean by the type selector. You can see that here we already have the H1. We are targeting the H1. So, but this other one that we said dot style, dot heading one, these are class selectors. But this H1, here we are targeting all H1. So all the H1 that would have, all right. So I would have to Okay, I would have to take this one out. This was this was the exercise we did for HTML iframes. Okay, so now all the H1 that we have here, okay, we can actually target them. Okay, so here, all right. Now here we are targeting the H1. So if we have another H1 down here, it would also get it. Okay. Okay. So when you use a type selector, all right, you're targeting every element. Okay, so if I run this now, here we are not targeting the paragraph, but we are targeting all the H1. So if I open with live server, so the two H1 that we have are colored red, but the paragraph wasn't targeted. So if you want to target the paragraph, okay, so all you have to do is to say, I could just use the paragraph here, and the color is what? Blue. All right. So if I do this, you can see we have targeted the paragraph. So if we have another paragraph in here, it would also be blue. I could say, And when I look at it now, you can see all these paragraphs have been targeted. So this is how the target element, the type selector works, okay? You use the tag name to target all the elements that have that tag name, okay? So what are the key points about type selectors? Now, the type selector selects all elements of a given type. Just like you have seen, we have targeted the all H1, we targeted all H1. So if you use P as a type selector, it will apply to every P tag in the document. All right. So you have seen it already. We have two paragraphs in the document, and we use the P to target it. So this means that it's a global style for that element type. So when you do this, you're actually targeting all the elements of that given type. So there's no preceding symbol, unlike the class selector that we do dot class name, all right, or ID. We'll talk about ID selector in the next section. Right here with the tag, with the type selector, there is no preceding symbol. Type selectors only use the tag name itself. There is no dot or hash prefix, nothing like that. Okay, so it is case sensitive. In HTML, tag names are they are case insensitive, all right? But in SHTML and XML documents, they are case sensitive. So we wouldn't worry about now. This is what we mean by case sensitivity, okay? Look at it. The case is actual matters. Now, if I say, if you have been following the JavaScript class, you can see that you will know that JavaScript is case sensitive. But right now, we are saying here that when you use a type selector, it is case insensitive. Now look at it. We are using capital P here, but what we are targeting is small p. So it doesn't matter. So that is what we mean by case insensitive. The case doesn't matter whether it's lowercase or uppercase. It doesn't really matter. Okay. So if I still save this, we'll still get what we expected. It is case insensitive. So whether you use capital P or small p, all right, it will still target it. Okay. So it is case insensitive. There's another type of HTML we call SHTML, all right, but that's not what we are using actually, okay? So specificity, the type selectors have low specificity, all right? It means that they can be easily overridden by other selectors with higher specificity. We'll talk about specificity later on, but in a nutshell, it is just when you style a particular element using more than one selector, all right, type selector will have the least specificity. That means other ones can override it. So this is what we mean. When we say we have P, all right, we have P, and this P, the color is blue, but now we're also looking at this class. So okay, let's go with the head one. The color is red, but we also, if we now use class here, all right, the class we use here will override. Look at it. We are styling this H1 with two selectors. The first one is we are using the H1 because this H1 will match it and also match the second one. But we are also styling it with the class selector. So which one will take precedence? All right, class selector has a higher specificity than type selector. Okay, so it has more specificity than it. I think the type selector it's only the universal selector that has a lower specificity than the type selector. All right. So right now, the color, the class selector will take precedence. Now, instead of this H1 being red, it's going to be green. So let's take a look at it. You can see it. So class selectors have more specificity than than type selectors. All right. So ID selectors also have more specificity than the type selector. So just this can be a cause of you'll be like, I'm styling this thing, but why is it not showing? It has happened to me several times. You make styles and you're wondering, why is it not showing? The thing is that class selectors, if you have a particular style and you're using class selector to target it, and also you're using type selector to target it, the class selector will have more precedence. So that's your type selector, the styles that you have there will not actually show. Okay. All right. So you can also combine type selectors with other selectors. I think we also saw this in the class selector. All right. So now you can combine type selectors with other selectors. Type selectors can be combined with other selectors for more targeted styling. Look at the first one looking at is something we call the descendant selector. Now the descendant means we are targeting, descendant is like a child, all right, of something. So now when we do this, we are targeting an element within another element. It's like we're targeting another element nested inside another element. So the nested element is actually the child of the parent element. So the enclosing element, all right, is the parent element, while the nested element is the child element. So that's the descendant. So we can actually target a particular element that is nested inside another element. So how does it work? Let's take a look at it. This in this place now we have div and we have p. So what are we targeting? We are targeting paragraphs inside div. So if the paragraph is not inside the div, it will not show. Now let's go to code and let's see it. So we will have this paragraph and we would also we'll wrap this one. Let's wrap this second paragraph in a div. Okay, so let's wrap this paragraph in a div. Now, if I run this, of course, this paragraph would also be highlighted, okay? But now we can actually make it more specific by using the descendant, okay? So what we can do is this. I can say, instead of P, I can say div. I can say div, all right, then space P. So what am I saying here? I'm only targeting this style would only target, this selector would only target paragraph that are inside a div. Now this order, the first paragraph is not inside a div, so it will not get it. Do you understand? It's like when you want to target something, if you miss that target, you don't finally get that in. Here now we are targeting a paragraph inside a div. So since this paragraph is not inside this div, it's not going to get it. So this is the one that it's going to get. So if I save, you can see the first paragraph is no longer colored. All right, because we are targeting only paragraphs in a div. So that's what we mean by descendant selector. Okay. All right. So this only targets paragraphs element that are inside div elements, just like you have seen. All right. So we can also combine class and type selectors to start a specific class of an element. We do p dot now. We just do paragraph dot. So we are targeting a paragraph that has this class. All right. In this now, we are saying p dot special. The dot special is the class, then the p. So we are saying a paragraph that is a class special. So we can actually do something like this. Here we have a heading that has a class. All right. So we can just say h1 dot heading. So what are we targeting? Here we're only targeting H1 that has a class heading 1. So that means we only get this one. This style will not catch this other H1. All right, it wouldn't. Okay, even if I take this one out so that you can see, it wouldn't. I will take this one out. Then here I'm only target. I have two head H1, but here I'm only targeting the H1 that has the class heading 1. So I can only get the first one. I can only get this first one. So if I go on now, you can see only the first one was colored green. The second one wasn't colored because it does not have a class a attribute. It doesn't have any class in it. Okay. So what am I targeting here? I am targeting a paragraph or a H1 that has a particular class. So since class starts with the dot, right, we'd also do the tag name dot. Okay. So that's how it's done. So this only applies to paragraph elements within the class special. So any paragraph that has a class special will be targeted. So we can also combine ID and type combination. Although we haven't talked about ID, but this is how it works. All right. So just like H1 dot heading 1. All right. So we are saying here we use the hashtag to represent ID. We'll talk about it in the next section. So maybe in the next section, when we talk about it, we're going to understand it better. Right. So we'll have to leave this till this combination type. We'll also talk about it in the ID selector type. Okay. All right. So what are the disadvantages and advantages of type selectors? First of all, it is simple and easy to use. All right. Type selectors are very straightforward and they are ideal for applying a general style. So if you want to apply a particular style to all the elements, okay, let's say you want to apply a particular style to all the span element, you will just use the type selector to select every span element in that web page. It is also reusable. It changes the type selector immediately, update all matching elements. So when it changes to the type selector, so whenever you make a change, all right, with the type selector, it immediately update every other matching element. So it is very, very reusable. What are the disadvantages? It has a very low specificity. So, but if you understand this, it will not be much problem for you. All right. You just have to know that whenever you're using the type selector, all right, it would have the lowest preference compared to others, except for the universal selector. It has a higher precedence than universal selector, a higher specificity. Okay, so they are usually overridden by more specific selectors, which may sometimes lead to unexpected styling if not carefully managed. So since you understand what this means, you know that the type selector has a lower specificity than the ID and also the class selectors. You have to use it carefully. Okay. So it has less control. All right. Whenever you make a style, whenever you apply a style to an element, every element would have that. So applying the same style to all elements of a certain type can sometimes lack the flexibility needed for more specific and unique designs. So if at all, this you wouldn't mind this, no problem. But if this thing matters, okay, you don't have to use the that selector. It reduces the flexibility of your styling, okay? So when do you use type selectors? You use type selectors when you want to apply consistent styling across all instances of a particular HTML tag, like marking all H2 headers a certain color. So when you have a general style that you want to give every particular element, you can actually use the type selector. For more detailed control, combine type selectors with other selectors to narrow down your styling scope. Remember when we talked about scoping, we also mentioned the universal, when we talked about the universal selector, we mentioned about scoping, and we are able to use the class, we are able to combine it with the class selector to actually create a scope. So you can actually do that because the universal selector is also very universal. It applies to every element. While type selector applies to that particular tag, that particular element, every matching element like that. So it is somehow also general. But if you can narrow it down with style scoping, that would be good. Okay. So in summary, type selectors are simple, yet they are powerful when used appropriately. They apply styles to every instance of a specified HTML tag. They are best used for broad styling rules rather than specific elements, as they have low specificity and can be replicated by other selectors. All right. So thank you very much, and I will see you in the next section.